to Arbory Digital Experiences. I am Tad Reeves. I am a principal architect at Arbory Digital, joined here by Hank Toby, who is the Director of Business Execution at Arbory Digital. And we want to talk about Adobe Summit, because we just came back from Adobe Summit. This is the first in-person Adobe Summit in 4 years. Last in-person one was 2019. And I've been waiting for one to get in person ever since then because of many reasons. But man, there's just simply nothing like an in-person conference. And this Adobe Summit was awesome. So we want to talk about it and talk about both our impressions from Summit, what we liked about it, what we got out of it. And hey, it was Hank's first Adobe Summit. So I kind of want to start off there. So Hank, what did you think that being, this is your first one. This is you're getting your first dip into Adobe Summit land. So what did you think about all this?
Yeah, it wasn't quite what I expected. It's actually a lot bigger than I expected. So I work with you and Bryce, and you guys are both highly technical. So I expected everyone just to be high-level architects, developers, the people I normally work with. And really, I interacted with more marketers than highly technical people, especially when I got into breakout sessions that I was interested in. So that was a major thing to note. The scale of it all was crazy. The show Adobe puts on it, like the keynotes, was a lot cooler than I expected, at least like visually. And but content-wise, came off a little flat at times, I felt. I know we joked around, wow, that could have been written by ChatGPT. And at first I thought I was missing something. I thought it was like going over my head because I didn't know what to expect. Maybe I just didn't quite understand what they were talking about. But no, I think it was just a broad audience they were talking to, so they couldn't get overly technical. And that's kind of what I expected.
I think that also is a big difference between the technical presentations where you are talking engineer to engineer, or implementer to implementer, or when you are talking the broad corporate, synergies, marketing buzzword, baloney that you kind of almost have to just kind of use corporate speak to talk, it's like almost like their own language sort of a thing.
Yeah.
That does kind of get flat sometimes.
It felt like Adobe's opportunity to sell everyone the new up and coming thing to prove that they're still cutting edge. And I think at times I might have achieved that, but it's like knowing from our end, what's that going to look like in production? Like, how do their AI tools actually work, and are they usable? Are they going to add value? So
it's true. And I think that in all cases, and this has been a common thread for every Adobe Summit that I've been to, is that a lot of times they try to wow you with some new features, which there's always some crazy new stuff, and whether or not you're going to be able to throw that into production this year or even next year or the year after. I mean, there's stuff that Adobe released at Summit in 2018 that I've seen plenty of companies that still are kind of wanting to incorporate. Generative AI is the big buzzword right now. Obviously, everybody's talking about ChatGPT and other generative AI tools and so forth, and that was no surprise. I assumed Adobe was going to lead with something AI, and they definitely had some AI stuff at Summit this year. But Adobe's been a leader in AI for a while. There's been AI features that were released in Summit 5 years ago that most companies still aren't really using, and so it'll be interesting to see how many companies can take advantage of kind of the excitement and the buzz that was put out this year versus is it just to get you excited about the new tools?
Yeah. What were your main takeaways? Like, what are your thoughts on the whole experience?
Well, first of all, so I love meeting people in person. I think that the people that are in this space are like my favorite part about being in this space, because there are so many cool people doing so many cool things. And I think that, like, very specifically, like with I've been in infrastructure basically my entire career. in some capacity or another. I've been in the guts that make the internet work forever, right? And when you're like an email sysadmin and you're just got this kind of thankless job where you like your gear has to run, and if it doesn't run, even the CEO is mad at you, and the best you can possibly hope for is to be invisible. The marketing gear stuff that runs this is like the hope of the company. It's like well, we're here, but if we could just reach more people, then we'll be here. So a lot of this gear, it has attached to it all this hope and promise for the future, which is always exciting. And I think it kind of pulls in these people who are just kind of like jazzy, amped people who are really want to make something bigger and cooler than what you have right now. So I think the number of stodgy, stuck in the past individuals that you're going to run into at a place like Adobe Summit is not going to be a lot. It's not just tired, I can't wait to retire, people. It's people who are like really kind of out there.
And I felt that as well.
Yeah, and so it's this. I mean, so when you don't get a chance to run into those guys for a while, it's kind of rough, And there's no replacement for in person. I mean, probably the best. So Adobe tried a couple of tools. There's another Adobe related conference called Adapt2. The first time they put that together, they did their best impersonation of an in-person conference, but all the little serendipitous meetings of people just don't happen. What else didn't happen is stuff like this, which
yeah. I was fortunate enough to win a tablet at the Adobe Express booth, which was hilarious. Very unexpected.
Yep. Yeah. So there you go.
Unexpected. So if you saw a guy walking around with a tablet box, that's why. It's
full time tablet box and a big smile on his face. So
no doubt.
But all you had to do was just do some scratch and stitch stuff or something like that, right?
Yeah. Just signed up for the Adobe Express app, and they walked me through it a little bit, and a scratch off ticket, and that was the big prize. So
yeah,
that Vegas.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, and oddly enough, that was my last Adobe Summit experience. Also, it was Adobe Summit 2019, and they had some thing of like, hey, you should wear your everybody on Wednesday wear your Adobe if you're Adobe certified, wear your Adobe certified shirt. And people were like, and I was like the only dude who showed up with the Adobe certified shirt. I'm like, is this did I get the day right? And some dude walked over to me. He's like, you win some AirPods? Yeah, okay. But
it pays to participate at Summit.
It pays to participate sometimes, even if the game seems silly. But yeah, all the in-person stuff. There's so many people that I met. I mean, just old contacts, but also just you sit down to lunch, and then there's this guy that, oh my God, I've been trying to contact somebody like you forever. It's just somebody you just happen to sit down at lunch day. You can't emulate that sort of thing.
Yeah. In the past, I've only done the virtual summits, so I'm pretty new to the space, and those were good and informative. I probably didn't pay attention as well as I would, as I did at the in-person ones. And then there's no opportunity for someone like me who has no connections in the Adobe space to make those connections. And to be able to do that at Partner Day and then in the sessions was awesome for me. And to be able to see you and Bryce meet up with all the people you've worked with in the past, that was incredible. You guys really do have a big network, a strong network of past colleagues.
I mean, that's the thing about this space, specifically in the Adobe Experience Manager world, is that you just hit the same people again and again and again. Like, this is why we can't do anybody wrong in this space, because you will see them again. Like, unless you leave the technology space altogether, you got to do everybody right, because even if it's a different company, you're going to meet them again. But yeah,
I feel that. What are the most notable announcements to you?
Oh, well, so There's a bunch actually, and so I got some notes, but here let's okay. So the first thing, starting from the keynote, the because obviously it's on everybody's uh, radar and everybody's thinking about it, is generative AI. So it was, I think somebody made even the joke that like, hey, this is going to be the new drinking game. Like every time I say generative AI, and generative AI was mentioned like 54 times. Anyway, good thing I don't drink, because otherwise I would have been on the floor. But so the big news was there's a new tool that Adobe launched. It's a new project. Who knows if it's going to be the final name for it? Adobe naming has been an interesting science of late. So this is Adobe Firefly, and Firefly is their generative AI tool. And I guess the differentiator between Firefly and a lot of other things is that they're training Firefly. So Adobe owns this massive corpus of images called Adobe Stock, and so they train this on Adobe Stock, and all these are production ready. It's not like the dark web, weird, seedy, bizarre stuff that you find on the internet that other tools can be trained on. In this case, it's all corporate ready, safe for work, copyright friendly type things that you can then, if you generate something based on that, you can feel confident that you can use it, presuming that the output is what you want. And so that's the cool thing about this, because of the fact that what folks are going to want to use this tool for, and the integrations that are planned for Firefly, are things like, let's say I have, I'm a retailer for a bunch of kitchen stuff. And so I've got kitchen stuff, and I've got a product photo that's just on a white background. And now I want to make a bunch of interesting product images for something, either to show it on a commerce site, or I want to make some ads, or whatever I'm going to do. And to be able to use Firefly to say, good, take my stock image, and I want you to put it in a rustic cabin kitchen, or I want to put it in a restaurant, busy restaurant, on a stainless steel countertop, or put it, on fire in a cave. I don't know, whenever you really feel like that would communicate best with this image, with this product that you've got. Then you can have the generative AI go and generate the background and so forth, and make a usable product shot that you could use in an advertisement, on a product display page, on a blog post, whatever. So that sort of thing is like, it takes it way out of the realm of like, oh, this is a curiosity. Like right now, Firefly is kind of in beta. I've got a beta test of it, and you see some of the crazy stuff that I've generated. I had my daughter do some of these of like, give me a nerdy dragon wearing a gymnastics medal in a bejeweled castle reading a book, and then it generates one, and it's crazy and it's fun. And that's fun, but that's not commercially usable. But having something like that, where you could integrate something like that into a workflow that's already very labor intensive. Because if you take, this is something that Adobe's been trying to solve for years now, which is this idea of how to make the labor intensive part of content utilization and delivery, take out the labor. And a lot of that labor, I started out in the industry actually at the same time as I was trying to figure out whether or not I was going to go tech or something else. I was between tech and design. And I was actually a graphic designer. One of my first jobs was I was a CorelDRAW designer working in a screen print shop. And I was just doing, just like, okay, make this t-shirt, make this hat, make this, like, stuff like that. So the dump, like, just the brain numbing work of like, okay, I need to make this image, and I got to make 10 different varieties of this image in 15 different, all these different crops, and, put the text over here. And like, so to do all that work and make it all fit, and then, okay, now I have to do it in 8 languages. Okay, good. The German has to wrap because it's longer, and then the traditional, simplified Chinese is much shorter. It's it's mind-numbing work for a designer, it's not actually creative, it's mechanical. And so if you take that kind of work out of what a designer has to do,
the iterations of each asset.
Yes, exactly. It's the equivalent of like, you ever see Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times?
Sure.
So it's an old Charlie Chaplin, but he's working in a factory and he's tightening the bolts, and that's all he does all day is tighten the bolts and tighten the bolts. And I feel like that's he goes home and his hands are still moving like this, as he leaves. Like I feel like that's what happens in a lot of the assembly land for designers, unfortunately. And so I think that like that sort of a thing, you can say that your job is to get all these images production ready. And so the spring 2024 catalog, get it all ready to rock, get all the shoes with appropriate, flashy backgrounds, and you don't have to Photoshop all that yourself. You just basically, you're scripting your generative AI to take the shots that you already made and make it all nice. And then you're just tuning it so that it all looks good. And you're using your designer's eye to tune all that, as opposed to having to do all that manual grunt work, which to me is like, it's like, 100 years later, moving out of the having to manually do everything and take the what do you call it? Charlie and Chocolate Factory, the dad who had to screw the tops on the toothpaste, and now he's got the machine that screws the tops on the toothpaste, and he's moved up in the world. I feel like we're allowing people to move up in the world.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many people are able to use it and how many people start to use it in their actual production. I feel like right now it's still, and this is just my experience potentially, but it's still in like a more curious, like fun land versus Kohler using this on their creative process, working with the published assets.
Yep, I totally agree.
And that timeline seems a little unclear to me and maybe everyone else.
So that is really, I think in some cases comes down to tooling, and in some cases comes down to pricing, because in some cases you go, what is it worth, and is it worth ripping out some of these workflows that we have that are working installations and replace it with or phase in some of this stuff that costs something, but you feel like you can recognize some benefit in the future, sort of thing. So, but on that front, so one of the terms that Adobe put forward is this term of content supply chain, and the idea that the tools that they have now are really part of a huge business problem, which is content supply chain. And it is not just a bunch of disconnected tools, but it is the process of how do you get content planned, tasked, sourced, shot, created on, and used, produced and distributed and out to their intended audience, and then analyzed.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and then rinse and repeat of like, is this utilized? Did it perform? All that kind of stuff. So that entire supply chain, and having tooling that runs that whole thing. And the gear for that is like, this is the gear that we've been running on. We've been running a bunch of disconnected set of tools for people, and now I feel like this is exciting in that you're getting a chance to really deliver something that could be a real cohesive whole for somebody to massively ramp up that whole process and be a lot smarter about how you work there.
Definitely. One of the interesting things I ran into, just talking with the different marketers, especially ones at smaller businesses, was like, one, the pricing of all the systems was very not public at the whole convention. I feel like
that's something is not about to be solved at Adobe Summit.
Agreed. But all these tools look so great and powerful when used together. And I think it's definitely the most valuable when they're all used together. But the opportunity cost to get there is very daunting and unclear for like any marketer who wants to be able to use Google or Adobe Analytics along with their AEM sites and assets and CJA, all the systems. And And that seems like a wild problem to solve and a hard thing to be able to talk about with people.
Yep. Well, I think that is once again, and this is why. So our first sessions that we attended were Partner Day, and this is really kind of where I feel like partners like ourselves and others that are in this space, it's really our job to take all these various capabilities and to then be the intermediary between the crazy available technologies and the workloads and problems that the customers have, and to be able to put the right technologies into, not because it's easy for us to get excited about new technologies. The new technologies are awesome, and that's what we live and breathe. But at the same time, to have a measured approach to all that, where we say, this is that there are nifty new technologies. You don't need them right now. What you need is this, or there's this neat new way of hosting this or running this or something, and just say, I've looked at your system, I've looked at your processes, I've looked at your personnel, and you shouldn't use this nifty new thing. It's just going to be a waste of your money. And that's the job of the partner, to either implement or not with the nifty new stuff, to be able to in some cases shy a customer away from this shiny new thing. So I guess that's I think that's the neat thing about that I did feel that Adobe was kind of empowering partners in that regard, and really valued partners' input for things like that, as much as they want to pedal and get their new stuff out to market.
Yeah, it was an interesting mix of content on that end. How do you feel the value was of Adobe Summit? Do you think it was worth the price of admission? I had that from
Definitely. Oh, I think so. Definitely. Obvious. Yeah. Fully and all the way. And I feel like there's, especially when it comes to getting on the front end and on the leading edge of some of what's happening this year, and really kind of setting us up. I mean, really, I feel like you've got, the New Year for everybody, and then a little while later there's Gong Hei Fat Choi, and there's Chinese New Year, and then there's Adobe New Year, which I feel like starts at Adobe Summit. And I feel like that's the year that, so that's the watch for the new year. And because there's I guess let me just start talking tech a little bit here, because this is where the rubber meets the road for me a bit, in terms of deciding and like deciding on both the value of Adobe Summit, but then where do you go from here right now? So AEM is our bread and butter. Adobe Experience Manager is our bread and butter. How do you take this content supply chain that you've got and plug it into something which delivers meaningful, useful experiences, whatever that means for the company, whether it's an internal thing that briefs and keeps productive all of your internal employees, or whether it's the thing that you use to sell everything that you sell online, or it's a complete face of your company, or whatever it is. There's the gear that runs all that. Adobe Experience Manager, I feel, has never been a more diverse landscape, a diverse, supportable landscape, because Adobe Experience Manager previously was a really difficult to install, difficult to manage and maintain on-premise piece of software, and that was the only way to do it. So people had all these weird ways that they would deploy it. Now there's a couple separate products that Adobe supports. It's not just that everybody goes to this one service and that's the end, and that's the one thing that sales is trying to get you to do. It's much more diverse. There's much more to know, and there's much more right tool for the job, a supported right tool for the job. And so on that, so everybody knows about on-premise or self-hosted AEM, shrink-wrapped AEM 6.5 that's been out since the last Adobe Summit came out in 2019. It's still a thing. We're on Service Pack 16 now, and it's still going strong. And there are people that should still absolutely keep using that. That is the right tool for the job for that. And then Then you have AEM as a cloud service, which has continued to get better. And it's and there's a bunch of new features for AEM as a cloud service. We went to some great sessions, talked to some engineers afterwards and so forth. As an example, AEM as a cloud service now does multi-region delivery. So if you wanted to be able to have your cloud, let's say you've got a global audience, you're delivering in all languages. You've got people in Europe and APAC and all kinds of stuff. You could say, I want my primary region to be here, but I also want published delivery in Amsterdam and Tokyo. And you can then it's provisioning published pods in Amsterdam and Tokyo, as well as the global CDN. So if you want high performance for your entire site like that, then that works. It's got better maintainability. There's content backflow that is now finally rolling out. It was announced last year, but now it's really rolling out with a much enhanced feature set. This is if you want to have all of your lower environments be able to be in sync with production, so you can test in production, be a lot more secure with your deployments. There's a lot more attention on performance. So there's this multi-region delivery, which is part of the performance thing. But then there's your CDN statistics and Core Web Vitals are being exposed as a part of the deployment pipeline. So you could say, how did this deployment change our Lighthouse stats and so forth? And how our cache hit ratio on the CDN, how good is that now after this release? Because the idea is to try to make, and this is really, these engineers that we were talking to, their goal is to have, as opposed to AEM just being super flexible, it's now to have AEM be the most performant websites in the world. And to that end, there's this whole thing. There's just, was it really, unless you talk tech with people, they kind of skip this over. They announced some features that said, oh, well, and along with AEM's next generation composability features, like what was that? What was that? AEM next gen composability is a project that has been running under the covers for some time, not really broadly promoted, but has been public and out there under the names of Helix, and then later Adobe Franklin was the project code name for this, and now it's Adobe Next Generation Composability. I think that's a stupid name, but it's still awesome. It's an awesome new way of delivering content, basically, with an emphasis on having it be super ridiculously fast and have it be able to use editing tools that people are super familiar with, as opposed to having everything edited in the AEM author interface. You would go and you can use SharePoint or a bunch of Word docs or something like that, and then have it then go and pull those and render it using UI frameworks that everybody's familiar with. And so it's a super much faster way of getting content to market, and it's a super faster way, because another thing that's been pain point forever is the amount of time and effort it takes to roll out an AEM project. AEM projects are notoriously can be very expensive because of the complexity involved, and this lowers the bar seriously on that. And there are examples that are out there of projects of moving things to this Helix framework, where it previously was, like these would be, if it is an AEM project, it would have been, many month project, and they knocked it out in 2 weeks, kind of a thing. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, but now examples, maybe PGA.
Yeah, that was one not really necessarily talked about too much, but PGA was one of them. I mean, one of them that has been on this project since 2019, and that's been evolving, is blog.adobe.com. You go to blog.adobe.com. That's a great example of content that doesn't change all the time. It doesn't have a bunch of back-end integrations and so forth, and it can just go and it just needs to be fast, performant, and be easy to update. And so a more limited set of requirements that doesn't need this massive, full-blown application server like AEM to be able to run that. And so it's a great use case for this, a great launch case for this. There's a lot of, so that there are some sites. So this is, in the current state of this technology, this is really where it comes down to back to the partners and people like us of being able to then take this arsenal of various tools of, it's not a one size fits all. It's so I've got this website. Let's have a look at it and see what its technical requirements are and see where it gets used and see who we have developing it and see how often it changes and what its performance characteristics need to be and so forth, and just go, what's the right tool for the job? And to me, that diversity of supported technology landscapes is like, that makes it exciting as a partner, because I can go that I feel like I don't have to shove somebody into something that might not be the right tool for them. There are multiple supported ways and multiple very good tools to be able to get their stuff out. So, yeah,
That's just see where it goes. I get to work with Franklin or whatever else they're trying to call it.
No, NGC. It sounds like NPC. Yeah, it is the non-player character, but yeah, it is.
As people were discussing it at Summit, it seemed like Franklin was the most popular name, or that was like at least the cool person name.
It is a cool person name, and Helix is the cool thing name, and it lends itself to awesome logos. But yeah, I don't work in Adobe product development, so
Fair.
unfortunately. So there was that. And then, so that's AEM itself. Now, AEM Assets is a product which is super related to AEM, because it is still AEM under the covers. But really, in and of itself, I still feel like, and this is my controversial take that, somebody in the creative area will probably fight me on, but I feel like AEM Assets is one of Adobe's best 3 products that they sell, period. It is a fabulous product. It is just getting better and better, and there's a couple of little technical things that happened this year that when I go, oh, there's even more use cases where I could use this now for the Assets Cloud Service. Assets Cloud Service is great. So there's a new UI that was just launched or is being launched. It's like kind of in testing right now. But these like little things of like, well, now from the user interface, one of the things that you never could do, like let's say you're doing a assets migration. So you get this massive tree of folders. You're like, okay, I've got 100 gigs worth of stuff, and I got to get this all into AEM. Uploading to AEM is fast, but you can't just take folders and stick them into a web UI. And so you had to have it create folders, and you just pull the assets over and create another folder. And like, it's a bunch of manual, silly work unless you figure out a bulk import script.
Sure.
Right now, the new web UI allows you to go and take nested folders all at once in the web UI and throw them into AEM. So it's like just, a little feature like that is a big deal for a migration project. Mm-hmm. So there's that new bulk import tooling. But the one that fascinated me the most as an infrastructure guy is there was a complete redo of the connected assets feature. So this is a feature that was rolled out with AEM 6.5, and it was a feature that allowed you to, so if you have AEM and you've got, and man, my camera is really, with this sunlight, it's having a really difficult time trying to figure out where the heck I am. You just focus on my bike, okay? Just like,
yeah. Shiny people, they want to see.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Give me the spike. Anyway, I just need to do a podcast on my bikes. There we go. But anyway, so you have connected assets where you've got an AEM environment and it's a sites environment, and then you've got assets. And let's just say you've got way too many assets, and maybe you've got assets that need to be used in multiple different sites. So you don't necessarily want to have all your sites ground into the same infrastructure as this one site. So you have separate assets environment. But then how are you going to have people pick assets out of this site from your assets environment? So this is a thing where you could have a AEM 6.5 sites environment and a separate assets environment. And it would go and you could say, oh, I want to pick assets from over here to pull them over. Problem was is that every single time you picked assets, it would have to physically grab the assets and move all these blobs over into AEM. And it was unwieldy. It only worked with images, didn't work with any other kind of asset. So it was it's kind of a problem, and it made it less useful, and it also made having a separate assets environment less useful. And so this is re-engineered. It uses a new kind of a version of dynamic media, basically, to allow you to connect multiple AEM environments to a new assets environment, and to then it just basically points to the new environment as opposed to having to move the blobs over. Long story short is it makes it much more possible to run a cloud service assets environment and not have to worry about how those assets are moved, whether or not you can only just do regular images. It makes it much more possible to just say, hey, let's move our assets into the cloud service. So anyway, so just that one technical feature, like my mind was running afterwards of all these different assets environments that I've touched over years, where they've been running all their assets inside a site that didn't make any sense, or they can continue to have an on-premise assets environment when they really should move their assets to the cloud service. So to me, that was a low flying under the radar highlight of like, okay, good. So
you see the opportunity in a
lots of opportunities, lots of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other technological highlights that you wanted to touch on in this? I know we could probably go on and on.
I could go on and on, but really, I guess if I was going to circle back and close on anything, a lot of why I got stuff out of that was the ability to have a session and then run down some of the Adobe people afterwards and say, okay, you made mention of this in the last session. What's that about? And then to go and talk to them about that. So all these little things, these little interactions, which to me made the conference. It just made it as a starting point for the new year. And so yeah, it was a success summit. I was so glad to return to it, and I'm really I'm pumped about the new year. There's so much to do. And so many people that I feel like reaching back and say, hey, we talked about this 6 months ago. There's some new stuff. We have new things to talk about right now.
There's been a lot of
that I was like,
definitely.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, problems that I didn't necessarily, I have a great solution for you for, might be a better solution for this now. So this was good. So yeah, you asked, was it worth it? I think it was worth it.
Great. Yeah. It seemed like it was worth it for a wide audience too, not just you being highly technical. It was worth it for the marketer as well to hear from the biggest, most experienced companies on how they're solving their problems day to day. It was really inspiring, and I think I'll be able to take some of that into our company and hopefully some of our partners' companies as well. So I also thought it was great value, good experience. I hope to be able to come back next year.
Yeah, I can't wait for it either. All right, well, I guess that wraps us up for this podcast episode, and I think our next one is going to have to be a tech deep dive on one of these items that came out in Summit.
I'm excited for it.
Yes, indeed. All right, talk to you all soon.